Yeah.
Okay. So actually, I'm going to save this and open up a new sketch just so we can kind of see what it's like to start from scratch. So I'll do it here and call this simple bottle tube. Good. All right.
So new general.
Yes, that's the one you want to go for, the new general one. And you
Okay.
should get the same window as I have right now on mine.
With a cube in the middle. Got it.
And have you done any Blender before? I think we went through some like I think maybe it was almost 6 months ago we did something and you just followed along at what we're doing, but I don't think you did anything yourself.
I think it was Unity.
Was that Unity?
We did that, yeah. I remember doing Blender, but a long time ago, like 10 years ago or something. I don't remember anything. No.
Okay. So you haven't even seen what it looks like in here before?
Not really.
All right. So since you have pretty good eyes, you can probably guess what some of it is for. So the stuff on the left here is basically the toolbar, and that will change depending on what kind of mode you're in. So right now you'll see that right above the cursor or the select box icon, there's something called object mode. It says object mode there. And that's for all the objects. So every time you want to add a new object, a completely separate object into the scene, like this cube, for example, you want to be in object mode. So I want to just show you how you can add some things. So by the way, first of all, the standard thing to always do in Blender is to delete the default cube. There's even like memes about it, because you always start off with the default cube. And even if you want to add a cube, you have to delete the default cube before you add the cube.
Okay.
It's just a joke, kind of. So you can delete it by pressing X. So just
selecting it and then X. Okay, it's asking me. Okay.
Yeah. And then if you want to add something, you just go up here and it says add. And everything that you do in the beginning is basically meshes. So the first one is where you want to be on mesh. And then you can choose one shape that you want to do. I like for beginner stuff that very quickly gets interesting and complicated, the cylinder is kind of nice to work with. So we can do the cylinder.
All right.
So we have a cylinder, and if you don't touch anything after you've added the cylinder, then there should be a little box that pops up down in the left corner where it says add cylinder. You see that?
Yep.
Now that little box lets you control different things about the default shape. So you can change the number of vertices. So right now it's 32. If I change that, you can just choose any number and go to 16. Yeah, you'll see that kind of the resolution becomes worse the lower the number is, and better the higher the number is. So if I do 100, it's almost going to be completely smooth. Yeah. And if I do 16, then it's going to be very kind of blocky.
Yeah. What's the highest number you can go here?
I think we tested it before, and I think you can go to 1,000. I don't know if you can go to 10,000. Yeah, you can, but things are going to start lagging.
Right.
So I mean, already now I'm probably going to crash Blender, so I'm going to have to start over again. But I'm just going to let it calculate a little bit. There you go. So now, but this is like already kind of the first lesson that doesn't have anything to do with the hard skill of using Blender, but more like a higher end concept, is that you don't really ever want to have many vertices when you're working on something like this. You almost always want to have as few vertices as possible. And it seems like right now, just give me a second because it's going to by default add 10,000 vertices because I didn't change it back. So just give me a second. When it's like when you learned how to draw, right? When you did construction drawing, for example, for faces and stuff, you always learn that you're supposed to keep the details as few as possible in the beginning. You get the standard shape and the placement and all that. It's kind of the same thing with Blender too, or in 3D modeling, that you want to just keep the details as few as possible. And it's not the same reason, although that it's important to be able to get proportions and stuff to be correct, but it's more to do with moving stuff around. Because once you have like 1,000 vertices and you want to make slight adjustments, then you're going to have a huge problem making the right adjustments. It just takes forever instead of making it go fast. So anyway, so there's other things you can change, but that's the most important thing. And you have to remember, as soon as you made those changes and the box disappears, you can no longer change that. Because now it's assuming that you're going to make edits to the shape itself. So now it can't add vertices without destroying something that you've already created. So let me give you an example, right? If I went in here and I did something with the shape, like I extruded something, for example, or maybe I did this, right? And now I want to add vertices to this. It's a much harder mathematical problem for the engine to actually figure out. So it can't do it anymore. So anyway, I'm going into details I shouldn't do right now, but either way. So here we have a cylinder, and right now it's just an object, and you can move that object around. I'll show you how you can move it around. You can either use these tools on the left-hand side. So the move tool is going to give you this kind of local coordinate system. You can just drag those things around like this, very much the same way as we do in Unity. But it's not used as much. You see some people do it, but usually when you want to work quickly, you work with the hotkeys. So to grab this shape and move it around, you would just use G for grab. So G for grab. And usually if you want precision, you don't want to just move this thing around randomly in 3D space, because something unexpected happens. Like if I want to just move it to the right and I go around here and I have a look, you see that it's off axis now?
Yep.
So that's because it's very hard to represent 3D shapes in a 2D environment, right? So what you do instead, if you want to move it to the right, is you do G. And well, before you do G, you want to make sure which direction is which, and you can go up here to the compass on the right side and see. So up is the Z direction, right is Y, and then forward and backward is X. So what I can do is I can press G, and then I can press Y, and then I'll move it strictly in the Y direction. See?
Okay. Cool.
Which is super useful, and that works for all of the directions. So usually when
so fun to listen to.
This
is so fun to listen to.
Good. And so we have that. There are a few other very super basic commands that kind of give you almost 80% of all of the commands or all of the tools that you're going to be using in 3D modeling, which is scaling, which just means to make things bigger or smaller. There's extrusion, which means that you take part of the shape and then you kind of pull out the shape from it. And I already sort of showed you this, like that, right? And then there's also something called inset, which is a little bit hard to explain, but it's very easy once you see what it is. It's like this, right? So you create a new geometry on a side, and you can do that with any type of shape. And then you can extrude from there, right? You can make things from there. Now, you can do most of those commands in object mode, but you kind of want to, if you want to do that, you kind of want to go into the shape and be able to manipulate all parts of it. So that's where the new mode comes in, and that's when things starts becoming interesting. So you could switch over to edit mode, as it's called, by either going up here in the tab and choosing edit mode, but you're going to be going back and forth between those two states all the time. So Blender has made the tab be like the default button to toggle between object mode and edit mode. Okay. So you can just press there and you'll go back and forth between those. But okay, so we have ourselves a cylinder. And
Yeah.
we're in edit
Hang
mode.
on, Alex. I'm just gonna delete this one because I put way too many vertices in. So I'm gonna just put in new. Let's see if I can remember this. So add object, mesh, and cylinder, and then on the add cylinder vertices, I'll put that down to maybe like, yeah.
It's usually a good idea to use a number that is kind of 2 to the nth power.
An even number, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, to the nth power.
Yeah.
Okay.
So like 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64.
I see.
And also have it be an even number because you want most of the shapes to be symmetrical. Because a lot of times you're working with one side and then mirroring the other side.
Right.
So if you have an odd number, that's going to make everything real quirky and strange.
Makes sense.
So
got that done. Okay, I'm good. So now go to edit mode, you said, tab.
Yep.
Yep.
And so we'll just do the basic commands. Usually the first time people try this out, I just say, go nuts and see what you can do with the different commands. So I'll show you the 4 essentials, and then you'll just have some fun with it and see what you can do.
Okay.
So the number 1 essential is just grab, so G. But before you used it to grab the entire shape, but you can select the different parts of the shape and just grab, that part. So if I go here, I can grab this part. I can grab the top and move it around. Okay.
So I have, wait, 1 second there. So on your side now, I'm saying that when you're pressing something, it's highlighting that specific part of the thing.
Yes.
But for me, it's highlighting the nearest point.
Yes. Okay. So the way that you can change that is right next to the drop-down menu where you could select edit mode or object mode. There is these 3 little square boxes. Do you see? Yeah. You could probably guess what each of them do.
Yeah, the vertex select is the one that I'm out right now, and then there's the edge select, and then there's the entire face of it. Yes.
Yes. So depending on what you want to manipulate, you'll toggle between those 3. And actually they're mapped to number 1, number 2, number 3 on your keyboard. So if you want to very quickly change between them, you can just press 1 for vertex, 2 for edge, and then 3 for face mode. So to make that easy. And you can, you can grab anything. So if you're in vertex mode, you can grab the vertex and you can move it around. Right? And then you can toggle into face mode, and then you can move that around with the G. Okay. And you can also select multiple things at the same time. So if I wanted, for example, to only move these, I can hold down Shift, I can select these, and I can press G on my keyboard and just move that over there.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, so that's G for you. You can just basically move anything, be it an edge, be it a face, be it a vertex, and multiple combinations of those at the same time. It's just very useful. Now, hey Angie, nice pants. Buy new pants? They're very nice looking. They fit you very well. Nice. I gotta get myself one of those too. All right, so the next one is scale. Now, you know what scaling does. You know what it means. We do it in computer science as well. We like scaling things up and down. I wish it was the same in the real world, because there's some things I wish I could scale, like my height, for example. But anyway, so scaling, obviously, I can scale this entire shape and make it bigger or smaller. And the way that I can do that is by selecting everything. Now, I'd like you to try to select everything.
Okay. Yeah, got it.
Okay, you selected everything? Okay, go take a trip around the shape and see if you've actually selected everything.
Okay. I hadn't selected the back part.
Yes, because we're in 3D. So we have to kind of constantly be tilting around and making sure that everything is in proportion. And if you want to select everything, you need to remember that there are multiple sides. Okay. Now, so there are a couple of ways that you can select everything without having to rotate all around it. You can
Mhm.
either just press A on your keyboard, which
Okay.
selects everything, so all. Okay. Or you can change the actual viewing mode of this thing and kind of go into something called X-ray mode. So if you go up here, this is kind of the next part of the whole screen, the whole UI system. Up here on the right-hand side, we can go between different rendering modes. So we're actually, right now we're on viewport shading.
Mhm.
And if I wanted, and you can see everything's kind of flat and the lighting doesn't look very realistic. But if I go into this one, you'll see that it renders the light a little bit differently. And in the last one, you'll see that it kind of renders it more realistically because now there's an actual light source.
Uh-huh.
Okay. But next to these 4 different versions of viewing things, there's a thing called toggle X-ray. Now you can press that one, and then you'll be able to see through the entire shape. So you can see the front and the back and the top and the bottom at the same time.
Mhm.
See that? Now if I do select everything, I'll actually select everything.
Okay.
Yeah, so now I can kind of work through it. But I don't like being in this mode when we're actually doing detail work unless there's like a million vertices that you need to see how they affect things in the background. So
Mhm.
I like to not be on that one.
Okay.
Okay. So now that you have everything selected, now you can start scaling, right? So I'm going to give you a guess. Which button on the keyboard is for scaling?
I'm gonna go with S.
And you will be correct, sir. So press S and you can scale up or down.
Uh-huh.
Now that's not that exciting unless you have another element in the screen that you can actually scale it accordingly to.
Yeah.
But one thing that is kind of exciting is that you can scale other things than the entire shape. So I'm going to give you a guess as to how you could use that.
Mm-hmm. One more time. What did you ask?
So I don't have to just scale the entire shape. I can scale other things too.
Okay.
Yes. So what other things am I talking about, you think?
The like subparts of the thing. Yeah.
Exactly. So if you take the top face, for example, and
Mhm.
scale that one, you see, you can then it will somehow mathematically figure out
Uh-huh.
the size of that thing, and everything will change accordingly,
Right.
which is super duper useful. It's awesome
Yeah.
because it immediately get these much more interesting shapes.
Uh-huh.
So, and you can try to do the same thing. You can't actually scale a vertex, right? Because if I go in here and I only scale 1 point, that doesn't make any sense.
Right. Doesn't make
Right?
sense to scale a point.
Yes, but it does make sense to scale 2 points. Because what you're doing then is scaling the distance between them. So if I go here and I go S, then you'll see that it scales the distance between those 2 points.
Yeah.
So that's also very nice to know. Same thing with the edges. I can go in there and I can scale the edge like that.
Uh-huh. And
So,
the way that you selected 2 points was select the one and the other one by holding on Shift?
yes, indeed, sir.
Okay.
Okay, so that's awesome. Now, what if I wanted to, for example, just make this this object taller instead of scaling it evenly in all directions? How would you do that, you think?
Just taller.
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe it would be selecting the top side.
Yeah.
And then going pressing down S, and then the up direction, which was what, Y or Z?
Okay, try that then.
Okay, so it kind of works, but not fully.
Okay. So you only selected the top part. I never thought about this the way that you thought about it. So you only selected the top part. You press S and then Z.
Yeah.
And then yeah. Okay. Interesting. I wonder what happens if you select both the bottom and the top and then press SZ.
Right. Of course.
Look at that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
because it would be the same thing as scaling 2 points, right? But now instead you're scaling 2 opposing faces. But you'll have a problem as soon as those faces are not parallel to each other. Something weird is going to happen.
It's going to go,
Yeah. So instead of selecting 2 sides like we did with the vertices or with the faces here, you can just select the entire shape and then pressing S and Z. And then it will actually scale it in only the Z direction.
So A and then S and Z.
Yes. Yes.
Right. Yeah.
And then you can do that with any direction, of course, right? Okay, cool. So that's the scale tool. That's fun to play around with. And already kind of in my frame here, it kind of starts looking like some sort of a weird cartoon canyon, like Grand Canyon.
Yeah, exactly. So mine looks like a lampshade.
It looks like a lampshade? Okay, cool. Awesome. So the next tool would be E to extrude. Now, as soon as you start fiddling around with E or extrusion, things start becoming very interesting. So let's try to extrude some things. Just select the face somewhere and just press E and see what happens.
And press E. Okay.
Yeah. So this kind of just takes a face and it pulls that part of the face out and it creates new geometry, right? And as soon as you do that, you can start, for example, scaling the extruded face, which makes it look like this, right? All of a sudden you got this diamond shaped looking thing.
Yeah.
You can extrude that part again, and then you can scale that down, right? All I'm doing is I'm pressing E to extrude, and then I'm pressing S to scale. I'm not even going out of the tool before I'm doing it. I'm just doing E to extrude, and then S to scale down.
S to scale.
E to extrude, S to scale. Okay, there we go. We got a weird looking thing. I don't know what this is.
E to extrude, and then S to scale down. Right.
Yeah.
And S. Yep.
Okay. So there's not that much more magical to say about E, but you should also know that you can extrude in the different directions as well. So if you can press E and then choose a direction to extrude it from, okay? So if you want to extrude directly in the Y direction, then you'll get this weird thing happening because this is literally parallel to the Y direction. To X, it will go directly out. Z, it will go directly up or down. So it's the same thing there. Pretty simple stuff. But one quick tip, which is really good to know about E, is that you don't actually have to extrude for the extrusion to work. So what I mean by that is if I select the top face and I press E, which will give me the possibility to extrude, but instead I just press escape, that's not actually going to stop it from extruding. Now there are just 2 identical planes stacked right on top of each other in exactly the same location. So if I now grab this, you'll see that there's actually some geometry there. You see that?
Ah, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So you have to be careful.
Alexander.
You have to be careful about this when you're doing the modeling, because sometimes when you press E, you'll actually double the layer. So later on, when you're doing something, you might see some. I don't know if you'll be able to see it now. No, you won't be able to see it now. But sometimes where it's more complex, there's some weird fluctuation happening, almost like there's something wrong with the geometry. And a lot of the cases, the reason will be because there's like a double mesh, so something stuck on top of each other.
Okay.
So then you can just go on and you can delete that face. So you can press the face and press X, and then faces, and then it should go away. But in this case, I didn't double. But that's an easy fix for it. But there is a good reason why that exists, and that is, might not be so easy to show it here, but if I do E and then escape, Now I can scale that face, and I can kind of just take it directly. It's like a little hard to explain here, but so I'll add another shape. Let's see. I can add a cube, and I'll grab it up here. And if I wanted like this edge here to kind of go out 90 degrees on all sides, I could go E to extrude, escape, and then just scale that, and I'll have this thing going on. And then I can just extrude that part up.
Okay.
Okay, so that's a like nifty little trick to know about extrude, is that it is actually helpful to have that double geometry thing going on there.
Right.
In some cases. But anyway, okay, so we have this thing. Now the next tool, you remember what I said in the beginning? What was the next tool after extrusion?
I do not remember.
It was the inset one, the one that does this. Okay, that kind of adds new geometry inside the face.
Yeah.
So guess which keyboard key is inset?
I.
You will be correct. So that is, I mean, I is a whole lot of fun too, especially if you combine it with G or E. So if I do inset and then I do E, and then I do inset, and then I do E, and I do inset, and then I do E, you can create these wonderful little sculptures.
Inset E. Inset E. Nice. Very cool.
Yeah. And basically, a combination of grabbing, scaling, extruding, and insetting is basically what you do 80% of the time when you're doing 3D modeling. So if you want to know anything, well, if you want to know 80% of the stuff that you need to know in order to help the kids do things, this is basically it. This is what you do all the time.
Okay.
Now, there's all sorts of other things that are kind of variations of those that help a lot. But all they do, it basically is add or subtract geometry in interesting ways. Okay, so for example, you see this part here on the top is much more complicated than this part in the middle. Got many more rectangles or quads going on here than here. So there's not much for me to work on. So if I wanted this thing to kind of bend out a little bit more for there to be an edge here, there's nothing I can do about that right now. But there is another tool, and you don't have to necessarily remember this, but you can just know that there is a tool for this that's called loop cutting. Now you can use loop cuts to do this, and now I've added some extra geometry on the side, and then I could select this edge if I wanted to, like that, and I could scale the edge, and then all of a sudden I can do that. Okay. Now there's a hotkey for using loop cuts, which is Command R.
Okay.
I'm not sure why it's R, but it's Command R. And what you have to do is you have to kind of just put your mouse over the section or area you want to do the loop cut in, like so. So if I want to do it across here, I just keep my mouse here and I press Command R, and you'll get it kind of prompts you for where you want to do the loop cut. You see that?
Right.
And then as soon as you know where you want it, you just click. And then you have this orange line. Now the orange line can be moved. So you can choose where you want to do the loop cut. By default, it's going to do it in the middle. Okay, so it's going to find some mathematical place in the middle. And then afterwards, you have this new geometry. And now you can start manipulating things if you want to. Okay.
So now I can press, okay, got it.
Okay, so, but this is, again, just like an additional tool, and there's 100 of those additional tool, but this is a little bit more commonly used standard tool. Okay. So if you wanted to get good at Blender, just practice those 5 things there, and you got everything you need. I just wanted to show you one more thing, because I haven't showed you any of the modifiers, but those are really fun to play around with. It's just good to know that they're there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete everything. So I'm going to go A, X, delete all that, and I'm just going to add a new
A and X.
Yeah.
Wait. A, X. So for me, when I say X, it gives me that drop-down menu. That's what I'm supposed to get, right?
Well, okay, so let's see. I got this shape. I'm still in edit mode. I hope that you're still in edit mode.
I am
right?
in edit mode, yeah.
Okay, so if you're in edit mode, it should just select all of the vertices on the screen.
Press A, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And then you can press X and it gives me this thing. Yes. And the one that you want to delete is the faces.
Okay.
Yeah, so that deletes everything.
Mm-hmm.
So we can just stay in edit mode because actually we're still in that cylinder. If you look up here, even though there's nothing in the actual cylinder, we're still in the cylinder.
Okay.
So if I go out of edit mode, there's still going to be a cylinder, but it's just an empty cylinder. That's how they choose to do it by default, so you don't like accidentally delete everything.
Okay.
So because this kind of has its own history mode by itself. So if I do want to do Command Z, it's going to remember what the shape was.
Mm-hmm.
So if I go in object mode, I'm in a different memory space in a way. So now if I do Command Z, it's going to take me back to this cylinder, right? So anyway, I delete this. And then I'm going to add a new cylinder. And I'm going to show you something which is a different type of concept. This is not actually the same kind of modeling.
You're adding a new cylinder, right? After.
Yep. I'm just going to add a new cylinder. I'm going to keep the vertices few, you know, as for low resolution. So 16 is probably good. And then I'm going to go out of edit mode, just keeping my shape selected. And I'm going to head over to this panel, which we haven't talked about yet.
Mm-hmm.
And in that panel, there's going to be a wrench. Do you see that wrench? It's like a blue wrench. Press that one. And then we want to go to add modifier.
Okay.
Now, there's a lot of crazy stuff that you can do here. Basically, it's just a bunch of mathematical functions that manipulate, you know, vectors in different ways. And most of those are, you know, things like twisting or turning or looping things or creating arrays. So if you have one object, you can create 10 copies in one direction. So useful for creating stairs or pillars or that kind of stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there's one thing that is called subdivision surface. And if you press subdivision surface, you'll see that it kind of packs the cylinder. You see that?
Yeah.
Now, subdivision surface modifier is something that almost, I think, all 3D modeling softwares have, because it allows you to do something called non-destructive modeling. And the best way to understand what non-destructive modeling is to see what the object looks like in object mode, which is quite complicated right now. You can see that it's kind of added all sorts of different vertices. And we can actually add vertices or add complexity to this by going over to the panel where the modifier is. And there's a little button there called render. Now, if you take render from 2 to 3, oh no, I'm sorry, not render, viewport. If you take viewport from 1 to 2, you'll see that it adds complexity to the shape. You see that?
Mm-hmm.
But if I go into edit mode, you see that it's still got that cylinder there. Now, the modifier kind of creates a copy of the shape, and it adds complexity to that copy in all different directions. So it kind of forces it into becoming a sphere-like structure. But now we're doing non-destructive modeling, which means that, on the other hand, it saved the actual shape of the mesh, so that I'm not actually destroying the object. That's the idea. It's kind of allowing me to be a little bit more forgiving. So now I can make, but it's also allowing me to do something else, which is really interesting. It lets me manipulate the copy of the sphere depending on the geometry of the cylinder. And that's very hard to like articulate in a good way. So I'll instead just show you what that means.
Okay.
You remember that loop cut that we did?
Yep.
You remember how to do a loop cut?
Command R.
Yes. So if you do a loop cut on the shape now and just move that loop cut in some direction.
I'll loop cut it right across.
Okay.
Oh.
You see that?
Uh-huh. Wow.
That's really cool, right? And so
That's
if I do that
very
on the
cool.
top, and then I do it on the bottom, see that now I'm,
Wait. Can you go back? What did you do?
yeah,
So yeah, loop cutting in the middle, and then you dragged it up.
yeah, I drag it up,
Uh-huh.
I drag it almost completely to the top,
Yeah.
there, and then
And
I
then you
add
just
another loop
click
cut.
it again, right? Just to leave
Yep,
it.
yep. And then I add another cut. I just
Uh-huh.
drag that down to the bottom.
Okay. And then you drag that down. Okay.
Yep. And now I can go to the top, and I can even do a loop cut on this surface here. Oh, actually, no, you cannot. But this is where inset becomes useful.
Mhm.
So if I select the face
Right.
on the top here,
Yeah.
right, in face mode, and I do an inset, I can do the
Just
inset.
one second. Yeah. Okay.
I do an inset, so like this, right? So, and I
Right.
put the inset very close to the edge, like that. And
Yeah.
I turn around, I go to the bottom, I create a new inset, and I make that inset very close to the edge again.
Yeah.
Now I can go into object mode, and you'll see that I've got this smooth look and shape that has this almost like beveled edge to it.
Uh-huh.
Now, there's another word for this non-destructive modeling, which is called hard surface modeling. And so what that means is that anything that's made out of metal or made out of something that's not very viscous, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you heat it up and you bend it into different direction, you get these smooth surfaces like on a car or on a spaceship. Now, so a hard surface modeling and non-destructive modeling is used for that quite a bit. So you get these very nice beveled and smooth edges. But in order for it not to look like it's looking right now with these very hard kind of lines going down, you can right click on it and then add something called shade smooth. So if you have it selected and then add shade smooth, it will completely shade it. So take away that geometry and like pretend that it's a perfectly round shape. And look at those corners now. Like they look much smoother and much nicer.
Yep.
So imagine this, but much more complicated shape. So let's see if I go back a little bit, you'll see something really fun happening. So if I take this shape now, this thing still has a top. I can go and take the top and I can scale that down. I'm starting to get this egg shape. I can maybe make a loop cut and then scale that down. You get this weird shape. Go under there, I can scale that up. You get this almost like, you know, the NASA, one of the early spaceships in NASA. You can, and then you can grab this, pull it out. You can go down here, grab that, pull it down. And then you almost get like a weird flashlight or a light socket kind of a shape.
Yeah.
Go over here, and then you can extrude that shape, and then you'll get this crazy vase. Yeah. Okay, so, and this is super easy stuff. I'm just doing the extrude, inset, scale, grab thing. But as long as I have this non-destructive modeling thing on, or the subdivision surface modifier, it just adds so much complexity out of using super, super simple commands that you can almost go infinitely in all directions and create all sorts of crazy stuff without knowing anything.
Yeah.
Okay, it's super fun to play around with. So anyway, that was a few introductory things. If you remember anything, just remember the G to grab, S to scale, E to extrude, I to inset. And then just know that there are modifiers you can add, and that the coolest starting modifier is the subdivision surface one, because you can do really crazy advanced stuff without knowing much. Okay. All right, cool. You want to play around a little bit?
Yeah, I do. It was a very good introduction.
Okay, good.
I felt like I feel like well, after this I have a lot of stuff where I can just use this to create pretty much anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's fun. I mean, you know what I like doing a lot? Because one of the hardest things to do in anything, 3D modeling or drawing or whatever, is to actually copy real life things, or to conjure up things that you're thinking about in your head and make them look like you want them to look. So in the beginning, I didn't even bother with that. I just tested out. I added a cylinder and I saw what I could do with the cylinder. I just did a lot of crazy stuff with it, and I saw what happened. And then I added a sphere, and I saw, what happens if I do the same commands and same modifiers to that. And then I did the same with a cube, and did the same thing with the torus. And it's a lot of fun to just play around with that. You learn so much from just doing that, and not worrying about actually creating something, without actually creating something that has to look a specific way. If you treat it like abstract art instead in the beginning, it's much more fun.
Yeah. This mode is almost like using your hands and working with clay.
Yes.
Because I'm just making a mug here, and I pulled it out, and it made that nice, a kind of semicircle type of.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is there anything that you worked on, and me as a beginner could see, so that I can see what is possible?
So with a hard surface modeling, you mean?
Yeah, like some last project or something that you worked on where you've gone quite far.
Yeah, well, actually, almost everything that I worked on has been relations to the lessons. But what's possible? I think I showed you some of that stuff already, like the astronaut and the pirate and the canyon, and let's see. I mean, you've seen these before, I think. Let's see, structures, walls. Let's see. Let's see. Yeah. Let's see. If I remember correctly, there should be one interesting thing. I made like the beginning of the Pantheon, the Greek structure, the one with the pillars that looks very much that old Roman structure. Or Greeks, yeah. I just don't know where it's gone. Let's see. It should be in here, I thought.
1 minute left.
Oh, okay. Well, you know what? I could show you that, but you've seen most of the things that I've done before. But I'll show you one thing that I thought was really fun to do, which was I tried to figure out. Oh, why isn't it opening it up now? I tried to figure out, why did this become the house now? That's weird. I feel like there's a bug. One more time. Don't save. Oh, really? It overwrote it now? That's weird.
Oh, no.
But how did that happen? I was just in the file and I opened up another one. Why did it overwrite it?
Did you just delete all your work?
No. Well, it's not a lot of work anyway. It's just I'll tell you one thing that I did a while back, which I think would be a really cool beginner project for you to do, which is to model your apartment. So you don't have to model actually the things in it, but just modeling the actual size of the house and the rooms and stuff. Because I did it with one of the rooms, the room that started to rot, the rotting room.
Yeah.
And I modeled that because I wanted to see how I could fit the different growing, what do you call it? Hydroponics growing system inside of the room. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to say it in a simpler way, but basically I wanted to build the hydroponic growing system in there. And I wanted to see how it would fit in. So for you guys, when you're remodeling your house, or if you want to add like a new couch or something, it's really cool to have an actual model of the apartment so you can try out the different things and see how things fit in there while you're doing it. That's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Let me see if I can find another one though. Yeah, okay, save it then. Let's see, where do I have it saved?